we ask the questions you most want the answers to. So, guys, we are on a roll. We're here for happy, joyful, and free. My very special guest, Sherry Sotelo. I always mess up your name. It's such a short one. Sotelo. Why would I forget? I don't know. Anyways, Sherry Sotelo, the amazing Sherry Sotelo, who is making sense out of what goes on between our ears. For those of us who are struggling, maybe to make sense out of why we have addictive personalities or why we have addictions and whether good or bad and what's happening with us emotionally, physically, mentally, and how do we manage them, right? So for me, if you did not already watch the segment before, we covered steps 1, 2, 3. Powerless over whatever it is, including people, and having faith that things are going to be okay, and then being willing to accept help from a source that's greater than ours. Power greater than ourselves. So if you haven't watched that already, please go watch it. But right now we're focusing on steps 4 and 5. So this is covering the 12 steps of recovery programs, and they apply to everyone, because one of the addictions that we all have. Every human being on a planet has always had and always will have, is we're addicted to other people, and we're powerless over other people, and not realizing that can make our lives unmanageable, because it did make my life unmanageable, and it caused me to actually reach out for other things that were going to make me feel better. So go and watch the previous episode, because we made sense out of that. So Sherry, thanks again for joining me. I'm super excited. You rock. I mean, love the way you explain things. That you make the complex easy to understand. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, so we're diving in step 4. Basically, step 4 is taking a look at ourselves. Taking an inventory of ourselves. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. That's a total inventory. And for me, for me, I was having a hard time actually understanding why I was saying or doing some of the things I was saying or doing. And I did not understand why some people um, had those things that I wanted and I could not, and why I would not, why I would mess up, situations and relationships. And so, step 4, taking a look at myself, taking it, if you will, dividing up all the different ways I would respond to, with my emotions, started making sense for me. And it made it more manageable for me to be able to recognize and understand the how and the why and all that. And so I am so excited that I get to ask you questions to make sense out of the things that had me so confused. you know, oh my God. So, those of you who are familiar with 12 step programs, especially the Alcoholics Anonymous, all the 12 step programs basically are based on that. And um, so I I was having a hard time actually making a list and doing things the way it was suggested at the time, because I had just too much information, too much confusion in my head. And I was fortunate that somebody who happened to be working with people, someone who does something similar to what Sherry does, which is make sense out of why we think the way we do, handed me examples of what our emotions are. And it was explained to me that our emotions are God given instincts. They are there to guide us. so we can maneuver through our lives to the, so it's, so we're happy, so we're contented. Oh well, I was everything but happy and content, so it was really good for me to look at. So Sherry, so what I would love to do right now and kind of look at, uh, what is it about ourselves? Why do we not know ourselves? Why do we need to sit down and take inventory of ourselves? Why was I clueless as to why I was saying and doing the things that were detrimental to my well being? So, can you tell me what was going on with me?
Well, first, you forgot that you were a unicorn and you were comparing yourself to absolutely everyone else in the world and wanting theirs and this and that and the other, and failed to appreciate what you possess. So, I think one of the easiest ways to do this, especially for the audience today, is the character pieces. I don't want to call them anything other than pieces that you have access to. Let's go over those one at a time because each piece has its own reason as to why we can't reflect inward. When we're up against a mirror and our nose is right here, we can't see anything. Sometimes it takes stepping back and stepping back. And much like these steps, that's why this is included in the first half of the program, because you have to step away from the mirror in order to see what's going on around you and what's going on inside of you. But when you look across in that mirror, make sure you look in your eyes because our eyes don't lie to us. And so it's so easy to just bypass those same things and look well beyond and fight ourselves on this notion of, why can't I? You can. So let's dive into the ones that actually made you turn around and go, this is that list. I
Hmm.
see it now because it's written in front of me. So now we're going to give everybody the ear tickle on what they can face and how they can face it, but why. Maybe they took it a direction that wasn't productive.
Okay, let's tickle those ears. So I actually pulled a few of them that was on that list, and they're may or may they're not in a particular order that were important to me at the time. So just this is just general. So at the top of the list, anger. Okay, anger is something that's just like everywhere with, with all
Mm-hmm.
of us. And so the understanding, the explanation for me was, okay, anger is just telling me that something wrong is being done to me according to me. Whether I was right or wrong didn't matter. So what what was confusing and what I had to figure out is, um, how I respond to anger makes all the difference. So it's in a healthy form. I could just say, "Hey, I don't like the way you're talking to me. I'm going to leave, or don't talk to me that way." Or I can, that would be the healthy way, right? Or I can just say, "I don't like the way you're talking to me, and I hit you over the head with a chair or something," right? That would be the unhealthy because there are consequences. I'm being ridiculous here, but I had to actually hear it like that for me to say, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I get it." So, so what is it about anger that's just so powerful in one sense and devastating in others?
Oh, well, anger is probably one of our oldest forms of showing emotion. Where, we know happy, mad. Okay. Easy, right? But instinctually, anger also allows us to fight. It allows us to survive. It allows us to push things away that we don't want near us. Sometimes that includes those helping hands. And so anger is something that can build up into our body and make us deflect from what truly is what going on. And so that's one of the things that is really important to understand about anger in recovery is the what am I angry over? What am I angry about? How is my anger turned inwards? How's my anger turned outwards? And like you said, there's healthy versions of anger. There's very unhealthy versions of anger. And which one do you want to explore first? Let's go there.
Well, let's look at the unhealthy. You
Okay.
know, because anger causes more devastation in families than than anything else. So
Hmm.
but yeah, let's look at the unhealthy.
So, the unhealthy part of our anger allows us to destroy our versions of perception. It allows us to remain in a toxic substance state within our own body, releases, stress hormones, disrupts other hormonal components in our body, raises blood pressure, leads to other type of just poor habits, being mean to people to push them away, speaking bad about others, speaking bad about ourselves, operating in a self-defeating way, adding those substances as a masking agent so I just don't have to deal with it, taking their cognition out of place. So if I can't feel it, then I can't feel it. Then I'm not going to be angry. So anger has all types of patterns that it exposes itself in. Anger about our home life can leave us at work way too long. Anger about our body can put us in the gym way too long and put us in an unhealthy state. Anger about our relationships can make us maybe disloyal or abusive, um, withdrawn. Anger at our own parenting style can perhaps create this spoiling effect or other abusive patterns. So, anger has so many ways that it expresses, and ultimately, the goal is to push away the reality. We can't live with reality as it is if anger is what our first response is going to be.
So what do we do? What do we do when we feel that anger bubbling up?
So, then this is where the healthy part comes in because anger can also be the catalyst for change. When you absolutely take control of yourself and say, hey, I'm not going to allow my anger to dictate these things out of my mouth before I got a chance to think about it. It just forced you to go internally and say, how would I like to handle that? Or if the anger in your relationship, because it's maybe abusive or you're being abusive, changes your behavior, we could take that first little rise in our stomach, those little balled up fists, and recognize these patterns and go, oh, I'm here again. What do I want to be different? Let me release, let me calm, then let me move forward. So, anger is a great opportunity for you to do a self check because we become upset about a lot of things. We don't, as humans, we don't get to just skirt emotions because we just don't like that one. Well, there's a lot of things that we don't like, but we are forced to deal with it every single day.
So that, and I know that resentment is basically unresolved anger. And so pretty much all of us are walking around uh, resentful of people and things in our lives that we never really did anything about. We just don't like where they are. And so going back and revisiting a past situation that caused us anger, or according to us something wrong was being done to us, would be, it sounds like to me from what you're saying, is going back and looking at it from a different perspective. What was I angry about, and what could I have done, or seeing maybe the other person's perspective, or that aspect of it. Is that what I'm hearing you say, just like looking at it?
Yes. And so that's what anger provided you an opportunity to do. Because, yes, resentment is huge. And sure, we can have resentment towards certain applicable things if we were abused, for instance. But if we're looking at us as maybe just emotionally withdrawn and we're going to look at that resentment of from a guilt perspective, what did I miss? Who was I at that time? Because that's not who I am today. There is absolutely no point of sitting in the now, hashing simply the past. Those minutes are gone. That's not the present day minute. You're not the same person. Even cellularly, you're not the exact same person that you were. And so anger can teach us a lot of things, especially when it comes to that, resolving the resentment, opening the door to the situation so that you can analyze it with a more clear head, especially for those that are in this recovery spot or working towards their recovery, able to go back and look and say, hey, I see this piece about myself and I see this piece about myself and I see this piece. Those are the things I never want to do again. And then maybe, just maybe, I won't have those kinds of responses that I've felt in the past from others or even against myself. That's our goal, is
Mm.
to change so that we don't have to build up resentment, so we don't have to build up remorse, we don't have to have regret. It's the accepting. So, this really goes right back into accepting that people are who they are. People respond how they respond. And at one point, I was one of those people too. So let me love myself just a little bit more, and that'll calm my anger in a different way so that it's productive.
Yeah, so we're going into how do we manage. And so, those of you who are watching, step four is basically taking inventory of how we show up and how we have in the past show up in situations, have and how showed up and how we're showing up maybe even now because that's how we're showing up. And so this is just admitting,
Mhm.
no excuses. This is what it is, and this is how it shows up. And so um, I'm actually excited to share some of the examples of how emotions show up in us because it made it easy for me to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I did that," right? So, for example, let's say resentment was one of them. Unresolved anger from the past that we can, just look at it from a different perspective or admit that we played a part in it. The next one, blaming
Oh.
others for all the different things. So how yeah, how is blaming others affecting our lives?
Well, this one is always a great one because when you set expectations way up here, these are your expectations, and your tolerance is way down here. Your frustration is this big, and you blame this much. But if you have your expectations to a person's capacity and you have a tolerance for their humanness, all of their humanness, here's your amount of frustration. How much time are you actually going to be blaming? Why do we blame? Why do we point the finger? We point the finger because we're hurting. We point the finger because we don't want to accept responsibility or accountability. We sometimes blame because we feel shame for something that we did. Again, here's that deflection stuff. Sometimes we feel blamed because of our own internal understanding. And it's a projection because we would do that if we were on the other side. We would say, well, it was your fault that I acted this way. Here's the notion that has to go with it. Nobody forces us to feel a certain way. Nobody forces us to take on responsibility for emotions that aren't ours. Because if that was truly the case, as a clinician, I'm going to tell you everything about the happiness in your world and you're just going to accept it and that's your new happy. So, since we know that doesn't happen, it's just as easy to say, nobody made you mad. You made yourself mad by your perception. And so you can't blame that somebody else was responsible for this. We're responsible for our own set of emotions and then how we act and then how we react and how we outwardly show some behavior for it. And so when you can pull this together and start going with your understanding of, here we are again. I am empowered and I have control because that person doesn't control my happiness. They can't control my anger because I'm now realizing those are simply under the same category of emotion. Nobody controls my emotions but me.
Yeah, yeah, that was beautiful. Actually, for me, when I realized that I'm responsible for my emotions, it was actually very empowering because it went back to powerless over people, they're powerless over me. And as long as I'm blaming you for what's wrong with this situation, I'm powerless. But if I'm like, wait, I have played a part in this, and that gives me some power to do something about it. And so it was actually, like, wow, really. And it was like if I'm one half of every situation, and if I manage my expectations of you and what you're able or willing to do in this situation, and then I look at what I'm able and willing to do in this situation, then I have a way out, and I have a way to a solution. But if I'm just blaming you for it, I'm just sitting there like, powerless, can't do anything. So taking responsibility instead of blaming others actually plays a huge part. There's another one that actually has caused a lot of problems for people. The envy or jealousy. You don't want people to have something, as opposed to, for me, it was like, well, I had to change my perspective on it. It's like, oh, that's something I like, and that person has it. Thank you for showing me that that's something I like. Then I get to decide if I'm willing to pay the price for it. Like, am I willing to pay $3,000 for a purse? I'm like, no. Am I willing to spend $3,000 to go on vacation? Yeah, So being able
Hmm.
to choose for myself, and God bless you if you want to pay $3,000 for a purse. That's great. So for me, I had to keep it super simple and look at it. Well, thank you for showing me what I want, and then I can decide whether I'm willing to pay the price or not. So, what happens with us with envy and jealousy? What's going on with us internally that we're feeling bad at looking somebody having something good instead of being happy for them?
I think you kind of explained that one. It's the feeling without, feeling that you're doing without something. Um, Part of it also comes from this other unsettled piece of guilt of, am I willing to work for it?
Mm,
Because it's the work. That's the energy and the effort that it takes to attain, whatever it may be. And so if you're not willing to do the work and put in the energy and put in the effort, and you just want, then we become like tantruming children. Well, why does that person have this and I don't? Did you work for it? Well, no, but why can't I just have those things? What kind of effort are you putting into it right now other than telling me about what you want that you don't have? So this envy and jealousy really starts to topple on itself and become this cycle of desire, desire, desire. I mean, we're walking human beings, we're walking pleasure beings. Our body is built to seek pleasure, seek joy, seek happiness and companionship. Well, that's just one more thing of seeing something that someone else has. We're doing this almost analysis of, if I was coupled with that, could I have this too? Well, if you were coupled with that $3,000 purse, and I'm Filipino, so between purse and shoes, I'm just a mess. Um, we build this sense of, ooh, pretty, ooh, joy, ooh. It's like TV commercials, like Christmas commercials all year long. Sorry for those that are just like beheading me right now, figuratively, about mentioning Christmas early. Um, but it's that desire, 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 where this is what we're built on. It's our pleasure principle. Why wouldn't we notice things? Why wouldn't we crave things? But it's that back end piece of, what am I willing to do for it?
is that related to deservability issue? Like, if I am not willing to do the work for it, does that mean that I don't feel that I will get it? Is that why I'm not doing the work for it? What's going on? Why do I want something and I'm not willing to work for it?
So that there's a sense of entitlement that is part of it, but that deservability and entitlement run very, very parallel. Um, Feeling owed. If you feel owed something, then why don't I have it? It should be handed to me. Ironically, here we go back to childhood all over again. It's part of our rearing process. Were we raised to work for things? Were we handed things? So then we're going to build cognitively this space that says we should be just given the things that we want, or did we have to earn the things that we want? So this is just a pattern of behavior. It's in our adulthood that we have to decide which pattern of behavior is healthy, which one is not healthy. Feeling entitled, feeling that you are owed something, very unhealthy. Feeling that you deserve something, but not stopping on that thought. It's because you're willing to work and put the energy and effort into it, then absolutely. And you may or may not get it if it's available. And so that's creating that healthy realm cognitively based on what we were raised with, what we have as our value system, our judgment system, our moral system, because that's all coming into play with this notion of deservability.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there are a whole that's great. Thank you. There are a whole bunch of other ones, but I want to touch one other one that seems to
Mm-hmm.
be pretty much everywhere. People pleasing.
Mm.
Why do we do that? What's going on with us internally that we feel like we have to be people pleasing, or really not sharing how we really feel, or we're afraid? What is happening there?
If we're talking about that concept from the self-esteem side versus expectations of reciprocity, two different operating modes. But from the self-esteem side, because it feels good to have acknowledgement, it feels good to have praise, it feels good to feel appreciated. And so when we do things for others, and this is also very prevalent in communal cultures, less so in individualistic cultures where as a community as a whole, we're looking at the greater good. What can we provide to others? Because this is part of our norm. What can we provide to others? Because it puts a smile on their face. And in turn, that also makes us feel good because we're spreading a type of joy. We're spreading a type of happiness. We're spreading our generosity. So this is again where so much goes back to just our childhood and how we've learned to share. And did we get praise for sharing? Our school structures are geared towards this K through 12. You learn how to operate amongst others, and you're either going to please the teacher and please your friends and your family at the same time in the evenings, or you're not. And then there's a feeling of rejection that comes along, possibly feelings of abandonment. From the teacher perspective, it's you receive a low mark, maybe don't graduate or receive the diploma for high school. So those are all rejections that fill our self esteem and our self confidence to say, okay, well, maybe we just want to solely operate on that people pleasing part, but we didn't put in a really good balance to it. Maybe we started overextending ourselves because that's the only way, and that's how we surrounded ourselves, not intentionally usually. We only surrounded ourselves with people that praise only when they receive. And so it's this feedback loop of constant reiteration of behavior like, oh, okay, well then I'm going to get the smile. I'm going to get the hug. I'm going to get the I love you. Otherwise I'm not getting it. And so no, 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 I need to go do that again.
Hmm. So it's very interesting. We could talk about this for hours, and I think we're going to have many more. We're going to have many more on this moving forward. But my understanding and my experience with this is that regardless of what character defect it is, the emotion is unhealthy form is called a character defect in the program. Um, the the foundational piece for that is fear. So no matter what it is, if we're angry, it's like, okay, I'm afraid of being whatever it is underneath it. If I'm jealous, I'm afraid of looking like I'm less.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm people pleasing, I'm afraid of. So is that what we should be looking at, no matter what we're feeling? Should we be asking the question, what am I really afraid of? Why am I
Yes.
feeling this way?
Ask yourself why, and be the annoying 2-year old self. The but why? But why? But why? Because fear does drive us. That's our primal instinct. The fear of the unknown. What's around a corner? Are we going to be safe or not? So, yes, fear is absolutely our operating mechanism.
Wow. Okay. So, having said that, those of you who are busy writing down all the things that are making you unhappy, or the emotions that are bringing negative results, you may want to just kind of just jot them down and just every now and then look at them and see where they're coming from. What are you really afraid of? And
Mhm.
the why.
The
With
absolute why.
be the annoying child, right? I love that.
And then it's from there that you take those whys. But once you source that fear, the question stops.
Yeah.
There's no reason to ask the question again. You already answered it.
Yeah. So let's go right into step 5, which is basically sharing our character defects, our inventory with another human being. Now,
Aha.
I will tell you that I was refusing to do this. It took me forever to finish step 4. It took me a whole year to finish step 4, because I knew step 5 was coming, and there
Fear.
were, yeah, and there were things about me where I really, and probably was if me, kind of thing, that deep down inside. And my experience with it was actually absolutely beautiful. I actually did it with, my sponsor, this beautiful woman, very spiritually centered. And no matter what I said, it was just nothing but love and acceptance coming back, in her eyes. And every now and then she would say, "And if there is a name for it, somebody else has done it. I hate to break it to you," you know. So let's just have fun with it, kind of thing. But that aspect of it was very, very freeing for me. I can tell you, for the first time in my life, I actually felt unconditional love from another human being. Now, that's not to say that I didn't know that, my parents, I come from, average kind of home, and I always did feel loved, but it always seemed to be conditional, right? To me, I had to be the good little girl. I had to be the straight A student. I had to sing at the family gatherings. I had to dance. I had to do. It was always like I had to do something to be totally accepted. Now, nobody told me that. Nobody said, "I'm not going to love you if you don't do this," or "I'm going to love you more if you do that." But as a child, I just kind of took that on. So I always felt like I had to be a certain way. So step 5 was pivotal for me, because there were things in my life that I wasn't very proud of. There were situations where I was like, "Oh, darn, I can't believe I said or did that," you know. And so internally, it was like, "Yeah, if you really knew me, you wouldn't think so good at me. If you really knew me, you wouldn't like me." And so let's get to why it's so important for us to not hold on to secrets, because we hear we're sick with our secrets, right? And so this, step 5 also says that it doesn't have to be one person. It could be clergy. It could be, somebody like Sherry, who totally understands, and they can help you sort through things. It just another human being. Okay. And so I'm going to bring it over to you, Sherry. So explain to us, please, why is it so important for us to be totally open and receptive?
That goes to the basis of our formation as communal species. We're not meant to be alone. So, at its absolute foundational ground level, is because we are not independent, nomadic as as a person, we're always going to be surrounded. It's what we seek. It's what we're geared for. So that's part of how we create community is through communication. And so sharing is speaking, even sharing in the nonverbal sense is communicating. We're always going to be a healthier individual if we share with another, because that's our sourcing. It's also why we have to have two in order to reproduce. Again, this is our absolute base as a human. So you're going to share in all kinds of ways, even if you're not trying to share. So, but the sharing to feel better is because then we feel supported. It feels like our community grows. It feels like our safety net, because again, we operate for self preservation, we operate in safety. Our safety net says, okay, this person knows me, so I'm bringing them closer. This person knows me, I'm going to bring them closer. All of a sudden, my safety net around me is so much more secure. It's like a bundle of twigs. You put them together, very hard to break. Single one, very easy to break. This is why sharing is such an important piece of who we are as a species. So hopefully that helps you
Yeah.
understand from the baseline level of why
Yeah,
sharing.
it does. Actually, it's almost like our survival mechanism
Hmm.
to be accepted who we are,
Yes.
to be connected. And I know for me, feeling like there were certain things I couldn't share because I would be judged, because I was judging myself, you
Right.
know.
Feeling
Yeah,
ousted, an individual
yeah,
person way on the outside of the safety.
yeah.
That's why we don't share, because
Mm,
there is, again, that primal piece to us. We would have been hunted out of existence if we stayed that way.
okay. So sharing and being open to receive the love that's coming our way, being willing to believe when people say you're okay, I
Hmm.
do love you, I think you're amazing, to actually be willing to receive, it makes a big difference. So now we're on a roll here. Let's. I do want to talk about step 6 and 7. They work together. The reason for that is steps 1, 2, and 3 had me managing my life on my everyday life better. You know, things started making more sense. Life started coming down. It was calm for the most part. Steps 4 and 5, they brought up a whole bunch of pain, a whole bunch of memories, a whole bunch of stuff. So there was a lot of healing kind of going on. I had to go back and look at things. However, the change in me started happening with steps 6 and 7. It was very, very interesting because the shift that happened was that I started changing the things about myself that made me feel bad about myself. The character defects that I had written pages and pages on. Oh, I did this and I did that and I did that. And it's like, well, how do I stop doing that? And so the simplicity of 6 and 7, I can't wait to hear your input on this, because most people don't talk about it. It's not one of the primary steps, but to me it was pivotal. So step 6 basically says, being willing, just being willing to stop doing those things. Stop doing those things. Am I willing? Yeah, I'm willing. But here's the part. It was very interesting. Um, to give up those character defects, the things that were there to actually take care of me over the years, they had pretty deep roots, and especially like anger. It was very empowering. So I had to like kind of, okay, which one am I willing to let go? Which one of these doesn't have very deep roots? So that's what I had to do. It was suggested to focus on the the top three that were causing me challenges in my life. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to let go. But then it was like I was willing to let go, but it was not up to me to stop doing it. I had to ask God to remove that character defect. So it's a process that I do over and over again. And here's why those God given instincts and emotions kept coming up. So something that would maybe get me in fear mode years ago does not affect me anymore, but something bigger will get me in fear mode, let's say, right? And so it's not what caused that emotion, it's the emotion itself that I had to learn to kind of see it coming and be willing to ask God to take it away. So that's my understanding, and that's what I've been doing, and it has been working. But why? Why is it? Um, why do we not let go of some emotions? Why do we want to hold on to some of them? How do we get ready? So all these things, I'm dropping them on your lap because I would love for you to make sense of them. I know what I'm doing. It's like I know how to drive a car, but I don't know how the engine works, right?
Right,
So
you didn't build it.
yeah.
And
So
actually, I'm glad you put it that way because it's just like a car. You may not understand the mechanics under the hood and you didn't build the damn thing, but you sure know how to get it from point A to point B. Here's the thing is we have built-in emotions. We don't get to just eject the ones that we don't like. We have to put them either into cruise control, we have to not put them into that gear, and that's the sense of all right, am I willing to make changes? Okay, yes. Am I going to do it? Or am I going to say, I'm trying to do it? Well, don't put yourself in neutral and scoot along. It's no, put it into gear of, I'm going to do this. But the emotions are going to exist no matter what. It's our cognitive level, our conscious level, our learned behavior, our societal norms that really step into this moment of I can't just act out on these things. I can't just act out on our absolute instinct. Why? Because there's consequences now that we're adults. And that's why we have this beautiful frontal lobe piece that gives us the logic and the reasoning and the judgment, but more than anything, emotional consequences that applies to others. We didn't have that as kids. And so this is what gets enacted from our mid 20s on till the rest of our lives. And that is that's our gear manager. If I know that I'm never going to get out of having anger as part of me, but I want to be in control of when I use it. If fear is always going to be a part of me, but I need to know when it's activated, then that's when you get to make that decision. And this is the very conscious decision of I'm going to do certain things, I'm not going to do certain things, and why. Here we go back to the annoying 2 year old. The why.
mhm.
So it's part of us, but it's our ability to make that decision that comes into play because of the willingness. So this is where again, you don't just stop at the one thought. It's the what then? And then what then? And then what then?
Hmm. So our ability to make that decision, like seeing it coming, like uh, I can hear the train coming, right? I know it's coming. Do I get off the track before it
Mhm.
hits me, right? So when do I get off?
Exactly.
It's yeah, it's one of those. So why are we resisting holding on to some of it until basically it's excruciating. We still keep doing the things we used to do, even
Hmm.
though we know that it's hurting us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the fear of not having it. So much in the same way that envy took its play of I want that thing, I don't want to do without what I know. I don't want to do without what maybe comforted me at one point, even if it was a toxic thing, even if it was a horrible habit. It's the I don't know how to operate without it. Hmm. Exactly. That's a good thing because otherwise you have no learning curve. This is
Mm,
where learning really comes into play. We've failed at so many things in addiction, but failure is absolutely the most wonderful thing you can have because it's your opportunity to learn twice. You learn what not to do, then you learn what to do. So if
mm.
you want to get off the train track, well, don't get, scathed by it first and almost completely hit and run over. No, you learn to feel the vibration and step off so you don't have the consequence. You learned.
Yeah. So I like that you pointed out that who am I without that? You know, it's
Mhm.
such a part of me. Who am I without that? You know, it's a part of my personality. You know, how would I function without it? It's like cutting off a limb. You know, it's like,
Yes.
I need it. I need it. And so I found a lot of comfort in knowing that I just had to be willing not to be angry, let's say, right? And just God would come in and take care of it. He would come in and take away my anger. But then I would go back and grab it back again, right? Because my anger keeps coming back. So it was almost like, oh, we're playing toss up over here. Okay, God, it's here. I'm going to toss the ball over to you. Okay, now I can take it back. You know, but it made it easier for me to be willing to be imperfect, to be to be okay with not getting it right the first time. And like you said, knowing it's always going to be a part of me. There are always going to be
Mhm.
situations that I'm going to get angry about. You know, there's something that's being done, whether to me or to somebody else. You know, as my life changes, as I change, as my perspective on what's right or wrong changes, as I learn to be a better human being, so there are things that are going to be disagreeable to me. So knowing that I have my buddy there, God, who's like the all powerful, who's going to take in and rescue me. I still need rescuing. I like that.
But God gives us choice. That's the whole fun of it.
Yeah.
Because we have got to learn, and sometimes we learn the hard way. I give this example, I don't even know how often, but when we set out on this brand new path and we're making all these new changes, we're doing this because we've learned. And then what happens from there is that if we start into old habits again, here's a little highlighter for you. If we're going to go back into some of our old ways, we run into the same wall and it hurts because you're banging your head on this big cement wall. And it's meant to knock you on your ass on purpose. Because when you fall down because of your old ways, you stand up, you dust yourself off, you pivot and go this direction. Sometimes God throws things back in our way because He's saying, hey, look, you're making some of these same steps again. Those steps are leading you back to that wall you used to hit. I'm going to knock you down. When
Mm,
you get up, your choice is, do you pivot and miss it? Or do you stand up and you do it again?
yeah.
This is the beauty of choice.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Okay, so we're gonna be wrapping up this segment and coming back with another. Those of you who are watching, this is this is two segments. It just feels like it's been forever. Segment two. Okay, we covered the first three steps. If you haven't watched that already, the powerless over people and having faith, and then letting God take care of us. Right, steps one, two, three. So you can go watch that previous video. In this segment, we covered steps 4 to 6, taking our own inventory. How do we show up? How do our character defects show up? Our God given instincts, our emotions that we deal with life every day, how do they show up? And how do they cause challenges for us? And then why is it that it's so important that we share and be totally transparent with another human being? Not just admitting it, what's in your head, being totally transparent with another human being, whether it's a friend or a sponsor or clergy or a therapist it doesn't make a difference as long as you are open and exposed, if you will, right? But you have to choose the right person to make sure. And then sixth and seventh, it was okay. Well, then now that I know all the things that I don't like, things that are causing me distress, or things that are harming me, or those I love, if you will, how do I stop doing them? And when and how do I deal with them as I see them coming up? So these are the first seven steps that we have covered. And what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a little bit of a break, and we're going to come back with steps eight and nine, which a lot of people hit the wall over and over again. But it's also um, it's just a beautiful, beautiful experience, very healing and transformational. So, with that, Sherry, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love the perspective of the professional. As I'm the lay person who has been living this for many, many years, a few decades, and but still, I don't understand all the aspects of the physical, mental, and emotional. So I'm very grateful for the time you've been, with me, investing and sharing this message, because we know it works, but we want to know how
Mhm.
it works and why it works. And so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, everybody, we'll be back in I think about 10 minutes. Just look for the live again, and we'll see you soon.